Alright, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at desert bases, and as you know, bases can either make or break your model, and if you're like me, you don't like spending a lot of time on them. I've come up with this super simple desert base that can be done easily, quickly, and still give fantastic results. All of the materials and paints you'll need will be listed below in the description, so let's get into it. Alright, let's quickly rattle through what you need. You need some thick mud from Vallejo or some basing pumice, some Martian iron earth or another crackle paint. You might need some super glue just to stick a few things down. You'll need some small rocks and sand to add texture to the base. And then you'll need a piece of cork bark just to give the impression that there's a big rock in the middle of the base. We're going to take some of the Vallejo thick mud and apply this in quite a thick layer on the base. We want this to add some height and some dimension to the base. So if you've applied too much, just scrape it off, but make sure you have a nice thick layer on here because we'll be using this to stick everything else to the base. So take the cork bark and just shove it into that pumice. This will stick to the base. You shouldn't have any issue, but if you do, just apply some super glue to the bottom of the cork and it'll stick fine. We're going to take a dampened brush and we're going to use this to incorporate the rest of that mud into the rock, just to make sure everything looks like it's part of the same scene. Right now everything's very malleable, you can move things around, you can adjust the position and then move the mud to make sure that everything's nicely incorporated. We're then going to take a selection of stones, gravel, sand from our bag and we're just going to drop that over the top and this will stick to that basing pumice. We're then going to apply some larger rocks and stones with the tweezers. You can do this with your hands, but it'll likely get very messy. But again, this just adds some variety, some texture, some more information to the base, making it a bit more organic and a bit more exciting. Then taking the Martian iron earth and we're applying some thin sections of this, some thick sections of this, just dollop it on, plop it in different places and see what you come up with. All in all, you should end up with something that looks a bit like this, and it'll likely take the next 2 to 24 hours to dry so it's fully solid, because you don't want any of the Martian iron earth flaking off or anything peeling away from the base. So do give it an adequate amount of time to dry. Prime it black, and then we're going to grab some Abaddon black and some Tallarn sand. I'm using the Artis Opus dry brush set, so I'm just prepping my dampener with a small amount of water on my finger, working it into the foam pad and then taking the medium dry brush. So the dampener just helps to moisten the bristles and give you a softer finish to your dry brush. It avoids any of that grit or grain. We're applying this in somewhat of an overbrushing fashion, so we're just getting a lot of paint on there, leaving the deepest recesses black but building up the colour everywhere else. Might take a couple of layers for you to get a good even consistency, but try and ensure that it's nice and even so we can start building up some nice smooth transitions and highlights over the base. I'm now going to grab some Karak stone and mix this into our previous Abaddon black and Tallarn sand and apply this with less pressure using less paint, so wipe off more of the excess onto the dry palette. So you can see we're using like circular motions, and I'm holding the brush reasonably far back from the ferrule just so we can keep the pressure nice and light and pick out those higher points. Again, whenever you're doing this, try to ensure that your pressure is not like mad hard, or else you might flake away some of that crackle paint. So continue to add more of the Karak stone to your mix, eventually working up to effectively pure Karak stone, but we still have the residue of the previous colours on the brush, so it creates that harmony and those natural gradients as you continue to build up the highlights over the base. Each time that you increase the value, start using lighter pressure so you're picking out more of the details. Now taking some Agrax or shade, we're going to apply this somewhat sparingly or randomly over the base. Don't aim to cover the whole base with this. We're using it to create some variety and some difference in finish and colour in the base. Then going to grab the Artis Opus small dry brush and we're just going to use the Karak stone once again to pick out some details within the base. We're using more directional strokes here than circular strokes because we want to pull the paint out towards the edge and highlight certain components within the base. Again, this is another opportunity to add variety and colour differential to your base. Now I'm going to add some tufts to the base. So I have 8mm dry tufts from AK Interactive. You can see they're quite large whenever you pull them off the plastic, but we're going to trim this down with our clippers. So just pick an edge, start cutting through it, and then pull those sections off. Do keep those small sections that you cut because they can be very useful just to add a bit more plant matter and a bit more variety to your base. So I'm taking that larger chunk and I'm applying it against the stone because that might be where, you know, it naturally grows because there's a bit of shelter from the elements. Sort of think about those things whenever you're building up your base because it helps to add that narrative and that story. And then take that smaller piece that we cut off earlier and just stick it in the back. Makes it a bit more exciting. Okay, so now I'm going to be taking some pigment from Vallejo. We're going to be using the light Sienna here, and the way that I apply this is I load up my brush, tap off the excess, hold it over my base, and then tap so that the pigment falls onto the base in a more natural manner. I then remove the remaining pigment from my brush and I come back in and I work it into the base. Areas that you really want to target are over the bits of tufts and the plant matter on your base. Adding more pigment to those helps to incorporate those into the base and gives them a more natural feel and colour. So now we have to bind our pigment to the base, and there are a number of products that you can do this with, but I find Airbrush Thinner is the easiest. So I load up a pipette, add a few drops to the base, and the capillary action will cover the remaining surface area. Once it's all dry, your pigment should look something like this, and I think this gives a very natural and organic feel. If you want to apply more pigment, you can go back and repeat the previous steps, just to add in some more texture and some more variety. So last but not least, we just got to paint the rim of the base black. So come in with the Abaddon black, apply 2 or 3 thin coats just to get a nice even finish, and we're all done. But I think this base really ticks all the boxes whenever it comes to desert bases, or at least what I imagine desert bases to look like. You've got some varying textures, you've got some different materials, different heights, different elevations. You've got the inclusion of the pigments. Granted, they're not necessary, but I really think that they add to the overall finish of the base. And you can see how versatile this base is. You can use it with different color schemes, different factions. You can use it within the 40k universe, the Age of Sigmar, even going back to Fantasy Battle. Great base, great finish. And if you use this base in any of your armies, please feel free to share it with me on the Discord. I would love to see how you incorporate this into your army. Hopefully you found that useful. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions for future videos, please drop them below in the comments. And if you want to take your painting to the next level, I have a Patreon that's focused around feedback and coaching. You also get access to exclusive guides and content. If you want to show me what you've been working on or what you've been using these videos for, please head over to the Discord and drop some pics into the whips or the completed projects. I would love to see what you've been doing. Just want to say thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you at the next one. All links can be found below in the description.